Hi, everyone. Sam Eckmann for Gold Derby here, joined by Kyle Wullschleger, cinematographer for Only Murders in the Building. Uh, and it's really fun with this latest season of Only Murders because the first opening sequence of season four, we actually get a great moment of cinematography from Once Upon a Time in the West, and the show gets to call it out as something that sticks in viewers' minds. But you get to mimic that famous opening at the end when we reveal Saz down in the basement. Can you break down that sequence for me? How do you kind of update that style of camera work to fit with this show?
Yeah, I think I worked really closely with John Hoffman, is the showrunner and the director of the first and second episode of the season each year, and he kind of came in early, knowing that this was going to be a big part of episode one, and you know we watched the opening together a few times even, and just kind of spent a lot of time talking about what's going to make sense and what's going to work the best, and it's one of those things. It's little things like just being in the space that we have to work in, and knowing like we have this dog, for instance, that does match this bit, and um, just finding the tone of what's going on for us while still interlacing that beautiful cinematography by from Once Upon a Time in the West. It's such an opportunity. It was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that episode, the first episode, we kind of jump from New York to LA. And there's something about Only Murders where the DNA of the show feels so steeped in New York to me, with the
Totally.
tone and the style. So how do you kind of maintain the tone of that New York setting while jumping to, bright and sunny LA?
Yeah, we actually talked a lot about that too, and in part we wanted the tone to shift, and I think you really do feel that in part. Like the idea of bright and sunny came up a lot, and we worked closely with our colorist afterwards in post, because LA, while we were there, happened not to be so bright and sunny, and so I think in both ways, like it was, we set out to say like, oh, we'll embrace this for what it is, and then it kind of wasn't that. It was another thing, and so it sort of leaned into, you have to. We had 2 days, 3 days to shoot that out there, and so you kind of have to just take what you have and roll with it. I mean, that's the truth of it. But at the end of the day, like the tone, so much comes from those actors, and they're there to deliver uh, as they do, But that tonal shift, I think, was really fun because we had that oneer. I don't know if you remember that we arrive on in New York, in LA,
Yeah.
on a set on the Paramount lot, and to kind of go out and like prep and think about how this oneer is going to look and how to make it feel as much like New York while still giving it, kind of immediately that something's off, and to have that rotate through and then reveal the set and all that kind of stuff, it was such a pleasure to step it up and do that.
Yeah, it's a great reveal. There's also an entire episode which is shot as if it's a documentary filmed by the brother sisters, who have a very, particular kooky style to them. There's handheld cameras, there's spy cams. So how, again, it's a tonal shift. How do you kind of
Very much so.
shift with that? What went into that episode?
So much prep. We what was really fun about that is the brother sisters are close to my age, at least, in the show. And so as we go through their own history, um, the cameras that they used along the way for that was really fun for me because it applied to some of my own experience growing up and getting in touch with technology, and so to be able to kind of apply what I knew already and say like, oh yeah, these are the right choices along the way for their growth and development was really fun. That was a big part of it. And then from there, it's sort of, yeah, like working with Jessica Yu, the director. She came in with a lot of prep as far as placement of those hidden cameras, and then the idea that like Howard is being utilized and sort of, shifting his alliances to whoever. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, knowing that it's all going to the brother sisters. It's exactly what we wanted it to feel like. And the choice to not use our regular cameras at all, because I think that could have been one way to have accomplished it, was sort of the show is happening, but also you're seeing this documentary happen inside of the shows. really important, I think, to John Hoffman, to Jessica, and especially to myself, that this was really truly a fully found footage um, opportunity. It was really, really fun because at the end of the day, you want it to feel like it just happened, but there was so much work going into making sure that it just felt like it fell off the truck without just falling off of a truck.
Right. And I think part of the real fun of this series is that it invites the audience to try to deduce the killer along with our core trio. But from a cinematography perspective, I've always wondered, how do you kind of properly highlight the mysterious killer character without, giving away, spoiling the whole thing too soon? Oh, they
Right.
lingered on him for a while, so fans catch on. So what is that balancing act like?
Yeah, I think we really rely on John Hoffman, the showrunner, a lot through the whole season, just because in part he is so involved. And so when directors kind of have those questions too of like, well, what's too much, what's too little here? We always rely on John to kind of come in and give us our best motivation for it. But I think it does sort of happen naturally as you go through it in that way where you and I'm sure some of it comes back in the edit too, where we do give those options and those moments, and then decide. I think they can decide a little bit later on too, like what's too much, what's too little.
Hmm. And I know you inherited this mantle of cinematographer in season three. What is that like coming on, getting that title in the midst of something that already has a visual identity, right? So
Yeah,
when you come in, what is your process of like, how do I put my stamp here, even though something's already been created?
yeah. So I come from camera operating. I've been an operator on lots of New York shows, and I came in on season two to operate for Only Murders. And so you get, just from being there in the first place, you get a good osmosis of what Chris Teague, who was the original cinematographer for the show, um, what he was after, and kind of what makes sense for the show. And then, for season three, I think I had a little bit of a like, all right, I'm relatively new to this role. I had done Aquafina's show, North from Queens before that. So I kind of was given this thing that I didn't want to drop, like I was trying to be careful with it. But at the same time, um, season three had a different vibe. It was very theatrical. So we talked about that a lot, where like, okay, let's push, especially in the theater, let's push the colors and let's push sort of the scope and the vibe while still making it feel true to what it was in that theater. And then for season four, I think I took something and instead of feeling like I was just carrying something carefully, I was ready to like really take the ball and throw it. And I think that shows through a season that's all based around cinema. Each episode had some sort of theme, and so like to do the Sergio Leone thing at the beginning, um, or an episode like Lifeboat later on, where you get to think about each of these little components and how you can introduce your own style while still then mimicking or taking some inspiration from things that exist already.
Is there maybe something, you didn't get to achieve before as you were figuring out season three that you really got to try out and got to, feel like you put your stamp there in season four?
I think particularly like one thing that sticks out to me is particularly episode two. Um, it was based on Errol Morris, an Errol Morris documentary. And he does such a it was based on his very first documentary, and he does such bizarre framing and stuff that I've attached to. I've always loved Errol Morris documentaries, and so to take that into the narrative thing that was also balancing this documentary about stunt people that Saz was in was so much fun for me. And then we kind of applied that as we moved into like meeting all these Westies, these new characters. When you watch it, like we used a lot of wide close up things that the show really hadn't done before. I think we kind of typically covered things in somewhat of a standard way. And instead, we wanted to this space in the West Tower is supposed to feel smaller, but at the same time, I wanted to feel like I'm very close to these people, almost too close to these people who are being oddly inviting at the same time. So there was just a lot of thought process in how we would get to do that, and that was a blast. That was one of my favorite things this season to do.
Well, each episode feels like it had something that was probably very exciting to do. It's great work on Only Murders. So thank you, Kyle, so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.